Jeff Struecker is a dedicated soldier. At the age of 18, he enlisted in the United States Army as an infantryman and retired as a chaplain with over 22 years of active federal service. In 2017, he was inducted into the U.S. Army Ranger Hall of Fame. He served for 10 years in the 75th Ranger Regiment in positions from private to platoon sergeant. While serving in this unit, Jeff competed in and won the David L. Grange Best Ranger competition in 1996. He taught ROTC at the University of Louisville and was recognized in 1998 as the U.S. Army ROTC Non-Commissioned Officer of the Year. Jeff spent his final 10 years in the U.S. Army serving as a chaplain in airborne and Ranger units. His combat experience includes participation in the invasion of Panama, Operation Desert Storm, Black Hawk Down in Somalia, and more than a dozen combat tours in Afghanistan and Iraq. Jeff's been awarded medals for valor in combat and has received many medals as recognition for his service in the U.S. Army. Let's give a big warm welcome to Mr. Jeff Struecker.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Please continue to enjoy your meal. Hey, I just want to say thank you for being out here tonight. It is just a couple of days away from Christmas. Everyone in this room is insanely busy right now. And I know there's other places that you could be, so thank you for taking some time to be out here for what's at stake. There's a few folks that we really need to thank. How about the guys that got here early and did a whole lot of cooking just so you could have a good meal tonight? And I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but Tony and I have been talking about this event this month for 3 years, no exaggeration. We started talking about this, 2018, before we actually pulled this thing off. So I just want to say, can you guys just tell Tony thank you for making this thing happen tonight? And how about the voice of the Montgomery Biscuits, who said that Kurt Warner was going to be here next month. If you watch the movie, isn't that what you were saying? If you watch the movie, that Kurt Warner's coming next month. If Kurt Warner is not here, it is all that man's fault right there. Oh, thank you. Hey guys, I want to take just a few moments and tell you a little bit about my story. Really, I'm here to talk to you about my faith. But I'm also here to tell you a story or two from Somalia, from Black Hawk Down, because for me, this was a moment that really changed my life forever. It's not, it may not be what you think. It's not because I got shot at and I got scared, because I had been to combat. You just heard a little bit about my military career. I had been to combat a couple of times before Somalia. I was in the invasion of Panama in '89. I was in Kuwait in '91. I was in firefights in Panama and Kuwait. So Somalia was not my first rodeo. There was an event that happened to me after the battle was over with that God used to radically change my life forever. And in fact, when I kind of finished my Army career, I finished up as a chaplain. And the guys and gals that I met in the military, they would recognize my name from Black Hawk Down. They would recognize my uniform, and they would see that I was a chaplain, and all of them did the double take. And they were like, wait a second, are you the guy from Somalia, and you're a chaplain now? What happened? And I gave them all the same one-word answer. Well, what happened was Somalia. That's what happened. And all of them thought, oh, he got shot at, he got scared, and he got Jesus. And my story is the exact opposite. So I'll tell you, really, the single greatest gift I've ever received in life was at 13 years old when Jesus Christ radically changed this kid who was on his way to hell and had nothing to offer, but God reached down and grabbed this kid in the middle of my sin and turned me around and changed me and made me into a new man. I'm telling you this because when I joined the Army, still in high school at 18, I had a rock-solid Christian faith. It wasn't like I got shot at and I got religion. No, I had a really solid faith while the whole time that I served in the military. In fact, I tried to share my faith with my buddies in the Army. Even as a sergeant in the Ranger Regiment located right outside of Fort Benning, Georgia, I was getting up and telling people about Jesus. I was leading Bible studies. I even spent my own money and bought some pizzas so that my buddies would show up and eat some food, and we'd read the Bible and we'd talk about Jesus. And Army Rangers are some pretty tough dudes. They are some of the smartest, strongest, fastest, and most competent men you will ever meet. And as a result, a lot of those Rangers, when I started to talk to them about Jesus, they viewed that as a crutch. Literally, they would tell me, "Hey Jeff, that Jesus stuff is fine for you. You can have it. But I don't need Jesus, because I've got where I'm at all on my own." And they've never had a moment in their life where they were over their head and in circumstances that they couldn't handle. They were just that amazing men. And when I tried to share my faith with them, most of them just shut me down. They didn't want to hear it. So I'm really here to talk to you about perhaps the greatest gift the Army ever gave me. And it's a gift that I hope you'll walk away with tonight. I really want to challenge everybody in this room about faith first. But the second greatest gift I think I've ever been given in my life, apart from Jesus, was the Army gave me a Ranger buddy. This was part of the training. It was, you're going to go through stuff that is so hard that no man can make it through on his own. And I want to tell you about one of my buddies who was right next to me in Somalia, a guy by the name of Dan from the U.S. Air Force. He was in those Humvees with me and right next to me when all of those bullets were flying over our head. I'll tell you about Dan in just a second. See, guys, I showed up and all I ever wanted to do was become an Army Ranger. It was kind of a goal of mine when I showed up. I didn't have anybody pushing me towards the military because I didn't come from a military family. I just kind of showed up in a recruiter's office and I asked a simple question: what's the toughest job in the Army? And there was no hesitation when they said, "Hey, it's right there at Fort Benning, Georgia. That's hands down the toughest job in the Army. It's the Army's Ranger Regiment." And so I showed up saying, if I can't become a Ranger, then I'm not doing anything in the military. Give me a Ranger contract. And went straight to the Ranger Regiment, right out of basic training, went through the Army's Airborne School, and went straight to the Ranger Regiment. And as you heard, I showed up there as a private, and I served for the next 10 years straight without leaving. Those guys that I served with are to this day some of my best friends, closer to me than blood kin. And they were the kind of guys who we struggled together, we suffered together, and we built some bonds through hardships together that are closer to this day than my own family. Now, when I go to Somalia, all I wanted to do was serve my country. I wanted to just test myself. I wanted to see if I had what it takes to serve with the best of the best. And when I was in the Ranger Regiment, I wanted to do what every other guy in the Ranger Regiment wanted to do. I wanted to go and fight and win America's wars. I didn't really want to go to war, but if we were going to war, I wanted to be the first guy on the ground and the last guy to leave. So by the time I get to Somalia, I'm a 24-year-old squad leader. And I've been to combat, Invasion of Panama, Desert Storm. This is now my third combat tour, and I've got about 10 men that I'm responsible for. And our mission in Somalia was to lead the vehicles through the city streets. Now, the unit that we went over there with, this Special Operations Task Force, it consisted of Rangers from Fort Benning, some helicopter pilots from Kentucky, and then forces, Special Operations forces from across the U.S. military that were stationed up and down the east coast of the United States. We all met together with just a couple of days' notice. And the mission was to go over to Somalia and to go kill or capture a key bad guy. Now, I can tell by some of the gray hair in this room that a few of you will remember the political and the world situation in Africa back in the early 1990s. There was a drought. This drought in the Horn of Africa led to a famine, and the famine led to about 300,000 people dead from starvation in Somalia, Ethiopia, and Kenya by the middle of 1992. In December of 92, the United States and the United Nations, because we're a good country, we wanted to do something for people that were dying, literally starving to death. So some of you in this room probably remember the scenes of the Marines landing on the beach, right? And opening up the supply lines just so that we can hand out food to a country that's dying of starvation. And most of the people in Somalia didn't mind the U.S. being there. But there was no government in Somalia, no police force, no military, which means there was nobody stopping any guys from doing whatever they wanted. Whoever had the most money and the most guns could pretty much pull off whatever they wanted to do in Somalia. And there was one warlord. Think about warlord like a gang leader in America. There was one warlord in the capital city of Mogadishu who made the decision to start to target United Nations workers. So he started to hit United Nations workers at the food distribution sites. He started to ambush U.S. supply convoys while they were driving food through the country. And in the summer of 1993, this warlord by the name of Mohammed Farah Aidid ambushed 24 Pakistani United Nations workers. This caused the UN Security Council to meet together. And the UN Security Council, some of the most powerful people on the planet, all said, hey, we got to do something about Aidid. This act of this brutal murder can't stand. We're going to have to respond. And so the U.S. military responded with Task Force Ranger. It was this entire special operations force. I'm explaining this because you don't send Rangers overseas to go hand out food. They're there to go kick in doors and kill bad guys and blow stuff up. That's what Rangers do. And in the summer of 93, after Aidid ambushed and murdered these Pakistani workers, the United Nations said we need to do something. The U.S. sent together this joint special operations task force from across the U.S. military. Go find Aidid, go capture him if you can, and we'll send him back to the United Nations, but if not, just kill him and take him out of the picture. So we showed up in August of 93, and we started doing missions to take down Aidid and his organization. We did about 7 missions in Somalia, and by mission number 7, we were making a big dent in his organization, but we still hadn't found Aidid. We'd got close a couple of times, really close, like we're going in the front door while he was running out the back door close. But we still hadn't caught Aidid, and we still hadn't caught a couple of the top-ranking leaders. We're 3 months into this thing, and we thought we were only going to be there for a few weeks, and we're now getting a lot of pressure from President Clinton's administration to wrap this thing up and to get out of Somalia. Because the news is starting to call Somalia another Vietnam. So we get a tip on Sunday afternoon, October 3rd, that 2 of these high-profile leaders are meeting in the same building at the same time. Now, I hope you all understand, special operators in the U.S. military, they only do business at night. With our training, with our equipment, man, we've got a massive advantage over the enemy at night. And this tip is, hey, this is the middle of daylight. It's in the very center of town that's controlled by Aidid. Like, this is the worst possible scenario, but we've never seen 2 of the high-profile guys show up in the same building at the same time. So my big boss, Major General William Garrison, makes the decision to go launch an operation to go get these 2 guys, which becomes known as Black Hawk Down. Special operators fly into the target building and assault the target building. While they're doing that, other Rangers from my unit fly in on Blackhawks, and they slide down ropes, and their job is to put Rangers at the 4 corners of the target building and basically keep everybody else in the city out. While the helicopters are going in, I lead a long column of Humvees. And our job is to wait about a half a block away from the target building. We'll pause and wait for them to take the building down and to secure the bad guys. When we get the call that the building is secure, we'll drive the last half block. Everybody who went in by helicopters will jump in on the Humvees, and we're going to get out of there in less than 30 minutes because everyone knows if we're there for longer than 30 minutes, that this thing is going to go south really fast. And for the first 30 minutes, man, this was going down just about like we thought it was going to, with only one exception. Now, we don't really know to this day how this happened or what went down, but when those Blackhawks were flying in and when the Rangers were sliding down the ropes, Todd Blackburn, one of those Rangers from my company, missed the rope and he fell about 70 feet and he landed in the city streets head first. So my battalion commander was on the ground at that moment and he called me on the radio and he said, "Jeff, we've got a seriously wounded Ranger. I need you to get him on your Humvees and I need you to take him back to the surgeon and get him immediate medical attention." Now guys, when I ran to get up to Todd Blackburn, I had an Air Force guy right next to me. His name was Dan. And Dan and I got up there by Blackburn. He was already unconscious. He was bleeding from his nose and his mouth, and he had a couple of medics working on him. Dan went right to work on him and put him on a litter, and we moved him back to the Humvees. And I called my boss, and I said, "I'm going to take Blackburn back to the base. I'm going to drop him off. I'm going to turn right back around and get back out of here as fast as I can." Now, I was already in a gunfight at this point. There was already gunfire coming from multiple directions. And at this point now, I am more concerned about Blackburn, this wounded Ranger behind me, than I am about the gunfire around me. So I had a chance to split my squad in half. And I put basically half of my men on a Humvee behind Blackburn, and me and the rest of my guys on a Humvee in front of them, and this 3-vehicle convoy pulled out of the target building. I haven't even been there for 5 minutes, and drove Blackburn back to the base. Now, guys, when I made my way back to the base, this scene that's depicted in Black Hawk Down, I have been in a lot of gunfights before this. In Afghanistan and Iraq, I went through a lot of gunfights since this, but nothing has even come close to what I went through on those city streets in Mogadishu, Somalia. Because I'm driving down a road that is about 1/2 the size of this room, not even a half, from basically here to that wall. And when I turn the corner on that road, I get hit from every imaginable direction on these 3 Humvees. And I'm talking about from rooftops and doorways, you name it. There are rocket-propelled grenades and automatic gunfire, and most of it is 10 feet away. And I got a guy who's on a 50 caliber machine gun on top of my Humvee, who's holding the trigger down and he's spraying bullets all over the place, trying to return fire because we're getting hit from every direction. He wasn't able to accurately engage anybody. So I told this guy on the 50 caliber, take the weapon, turn to the left, pick up all of the enemy fighters to the left. There's another guy in my Humvee who also has a machine gun named Dominic Pilla. And I told Pilla to take his machine gun, face it to the right, pick up all of the enemy fighters on the right. I'll take care of everybody, all of the bad guys in front of the Humvees. Another guy in the back seat will take care of everybody behind us. And now, guys, we're just fighting for our lives. We're just trying to keep each other alive long enough to make it back to the base. Down the road, on the right side of the Humvees, hiding, waiting for us, is a Somali gunman. And when we notice him, that we drive right by the Somali gunman. We're driving at about 15 or 20 miles an hour. And I'm as far away as that tree right there from him when he sees Dominic Pilla. And these 2 guys turn to each other and they shoot and kill each other at the exact same moment. Now, Pilla falls over dead into the lap of Specialist Tim Moynihan. The movie Black Hawk Down had no choice but to deliberately downplay the violence. Because when they were getting ready to release it, there was a high probability this movie was going to come out with a rating of X for violence. And so Pilla was actually shot in his forehead. He took a massive head wound, and he was dead before his body hit the floorboard. And then everyone in my vehicle started to panic. All of us started to realize, I'm not going to make it back to the base. We're going to die before we make it to the next city block, let alone make it all the way back to the base. And I'm the leader of this little mission, and I'm in charge here. And I learned in training as a ranger that as the leader, you got to get yourself under control before you can get your men under control. So as calmly as I knew how, guys, I just simply told the guy in the back seat, take your weapon, face the right side of the Humvee, pick up Dominic Pilla's sector of fire, and kill as many bad guys as possible if we're going to have any chance at survival. When we make it back to the base, I don't even have time tonight to tell you what it took to get back there, but when we finally get back to the base, my vehicle is riddled with bullet holes. There's already one guy who's dead, sitting right behind me, inches away from me. The surgeon is running to get to the Humvee behind me to try to get to Todd Blackburn to keep him alive. The medics are rushing up to my Humvee to pull Dominic Pilla's dead body off of the back. And I remember leaning over the hood of it, and I remember thinking, God, I can't believe that I just survived this. I should be dead right now. All of us should be dead right now. And at about that moment, my platoon leader came up to me. And he said, hey, Jeff, we just had a second Black Hawk get shot down. I didn't even know the first one went down. I was fighting for my life just to make it back. He said, hey, we already put the search and rescue force in when Cliff Wolcott's helicopter crashed. And now Mike Durant's helicopter has gone down. And we don't have anybody else. So I need you to get back on the Humvees, and I need you to go out to the crash site, and I need you to see if anybody's alive where Mike Durant's helicopter went down. Now you see this scene in the movie Black Hawk Down because one of the guys who came back with me, he overheard the whole conversation. And he said, hey, Sergeant, if you're really going to go back onto the city streets tonight, don't leave your men sitting in the back of your Humvee and all that blood. He said, man, that will mess them up for the rest of their life if you do that. You should probably go clean this Humvee up. So I sent all the rest of my guys to go get some more fuel, go get some more ammunition, get ready to go back out in the city. And I pulled this one Humvee off to the side. Now, we didn't have running water, guys, so I just took buckets and my bare hands, and I started to clean up the back of this Humvee. And this, at the back of that Humvee, getting ready to roll back out into the city streets, is hands down the most terrifying moment of my life. Because let me tell you what's going through my mind as a leader. At this point, one guy from our entire unit is dead. The only guy that we know of that is dead was sitting right next to me when he just got shot in the head. And if I drive back through the city streets, I'm going to get every one of my men killed tonight. And I was thinking about my family. I had been married to my high school sweetheart for about 3 years by this point. Been trying to have a baby the whole time. And I got a letter in Somalia just a couple of weeks after getting there saying that she was pregnant with our first child. And I was thinking, I'm never going to see my wife again. And my child will not even know who their father is. And everything inside of me was screaming, don't do this, Jeff. Don't go back out there. But here's something you need to know about those Army Rangers. They swear their lives to one another. They do it literally almost every day. They do it in what's called the Ranger Creed. And early in the morning, they get up and they vow to one another that during one of those parts of the Ranger Creed, they say, I will never leave a fallen comrade to fall into the hands of the enemy. Now, Mike Durant has just fallen into the hands of the enemy. And I've got no choice but to get on those Humvees. And if I go back out there, I know I'm going to die. But if I don't go back out there, I know Durant is going to die. And I start to think, this is a suicide mission. And I'm going to die. And there's no way around it. And at the back of that Humvee, I started to just simply turn it all over to Jesus. Now, I don't want you to think like this was one of those moments where the light shined out on me and I made this big deal with God, like negotiated with God. Because, by the way, you don't negotiate with God. There's no terms that I can bring to Him to negotiate with Him. But this was a moment where I just simply cried out, God, I'm in trouble. I'm going to die tonight. I know I'm going to die. And I need your help. And He kind of reminded me, like, hey, Jeff, remember when you were 13 years old and you said that you trusted me with your soul? Do you remember that? Because I do. You placed your soul in my hands and you said, here it is. You can do with my life whatever you want. Hey, Jeff, did you really mean that? Because if you did, I want you to know that I've got you right in the palm of my hand. And because I've got you in the palm of my hand, you've got nothing to worry about. You see, it became clear to me at the back of that Humvee, there's only two ways that this thing is going to turn out tonight. Maybe God decides to spare my life. Probably not, but maybe he does. If that's the case, then I'll go home to Fort Benning, Georgia, and go see my wife and our baby that's on the way. But maybe he doesn't. I'll tell you this. I know exactly what happens to me after I die. At the back of this Humvee, it just dawned on me. And either I go home to my family in Georgia, or I can go home to my Father in heaven tonight. But in either case, no matter what happens to me next, I can't lose. And I can't lose because of what Jesus did for me 2,000 years ago. Amen. Not because of what this kid did or what this soldier did on the battlefield. Because of what was done for me that I didn't deserve 2,000 years ago. When a baby that was born in a manger became the living sacrifice for my sins. And that was the moment like something switched inside of me. And I was 100% certain that I was going to die. But for the rest of the night, had no fear whatsoever. In fact, I was convinced all of my men are going to die. None of us are going to see tomorrow morning. But I know where I'm going to spend eternity. So God, just don't let me do something stupid that cost one of my men their life unnecessarily. If they die in combat, I can't stop that. But if I do something wrong and I live and they die, I will not be able to live with myself. So I roll back out into the city streets. I get really close to the Durant crash site. He's just on the right side of us, and he's in a firefight. There are thousands of armed Somalis crossing in on him, and I'm leading this column trying to get to Durant when we get ambushed by rocket-propelled grenades right next to the Humvee. They bounce off of my vehicle. They start to fire and engage all of the vehicles behind us. And as I'm driving out of that ambush and trying to get around to the Durant crash site from the backside, I link up with some of the other Rangers from my unit who are on vehicles and shot to pieces. Dan is going back on one of those vehicles. And we stop what we're doing, take the dead bodies and put them on the good Humvees. We destroy some of those vehicles in the city streets, and I drive those Rangers back to our base and drop them off my second time back. And I thought we had basically everybody back from the helicopters, but my boss said, no, half of the assault force is still out there. And we can't keep sending these light-skinned Humvees back out in the city streets. So we called the United Nations and said, we need your help. And right there in the city of Mogadishu, the Pakistanis came with 2 tanks, and the Malaysians came with armored personnel carriers, and other soldiers from the U.S. Army showed up at our base. At about 11 o'clock that night, we all drove back out into the city streets. I stayed on the same Humvees till 9 o'clock the next morning. When the final battle was over with, when everybody was loading up onto those Humvees, when it was time to drive out of the city streets, I became the very last vehicle out of the building that day, out of the city that day, the last Humvee back into the base. And when I get back in at 9 o'clock the next morning, my buddies are lined up waiting for me. And they're saying, Jeff, I need to talk to you right now. Most of them were asking questions like, Jeff, what happened to my best friend who just got killed last night? Jeff, you talked about heaven and you talked about Jesus. Well, where is he right now? And they started asking me, what happens to me if I get on a helicopter? What if I have to get back on those Humvees and I get killed? What happens to you after you die, Jeff? And listen, I was watching you in the streets last night, Jeff. I was listening to your voice over the radio, and when everybody else was totally terrified, you sounded like you were totally calm. I don't even understand how that's possible because we've got the same training. So what is it that you have that I don't have? Because whatever it is, Jeff, I want it. And it wasn't one guy. It was multiple Rangers who didn't want to hear about Jesus before this battle are lined up waiting to talk to me about him afterwards. And guys, I can take you to the exact spot like it was yesterday on this airfield in Mogadishu, Somalia, where I felt this overwhelming sense from God. I've never heard an audible voice from heaven, but this was as clear as anything I've ever experienced in my life. Where I'm on that airfield and Rangers are asking me to please share with them about my faith. And I felt like God just telling me, hey, Jeff, you know why you could do what you did last night and they can't? Because you have something that they don't have. And I want you to spend the rest of your life looking America's warriors in the eyes and preparing them not to meet their enemy. I want you to prepare them for eternity. That set me on a path to become an Army chaplain. I eventually spent the last 10 years in the Army as a chaplain. Listen to these numbers. I served with the Army Rangers that I was once with as an enlisted guy, and I went to Afghanistan 9 times and Iraq 5 times during those last 10 years. And I looked guys in the eyes on the battlefield and said, men, I know exactly what you're going through because I was there. And it is different. When your soul is secure in Jesus Christ, you don't have to worry what the enemy throws at you. You can basically walk across the battlefield without fear when you know exactly where you're going to spend eternity. I'm just about ready to leave Somalia. We were shot to pieces. We were getting ready to get another unit from the Rangers was going to roll in and replace us, and some others from the Special Operations Community were about to replace us. And I was watching a baseball game. I'm going to tell you about Dan now, my Ranger buddy. I was watching a baseball game in the airfield in this little hangar that we were staying in Mogadishu, Somalia. It was live, and it was the playoffs, October of 1993, and the Atlanta Braves were playing. The Atlanta Braves were playing against the Phillies. And because we're watching this game live, there's like 12 time zones difference, which means that this was a crazy hour in the morning. That I got up, and there's one other guy, my buddy Dan, who's watching the ball game with me. And about 1 or 2 innings into it, I looked over at Dan and I was like, Dan, who are you rooting for, man? I don't know that we talk baseball much. Are you pulling for the Braves tonight, or are you trying to see the Phillies win? He's like, Jeff, I really don't care who wins the ball game. I'm like, hold on just a second. You got up at this stupid hour in the morning because you don't really care who wins the ball game? He's like, no, I'm actually just watching the ball game tonight because I'm hoping that I can see my parents in the stands. I said, what the heck are you talking about, man? And he's like, well, that's my brother on the mound. Dan Schilling's brother, Kurt Schilling, was on the mound. And Dan said, every time my brother's on the mound, they usually pan to my mom and dad. So I'm hoping I'll be able to see mom and dad in the stands for a few minutes. I had to look at his name tag like, you're Kurt Schilling's brother? And your parents are right now watching their son in the playoffs at the same time that one of their other sons is in Somalia fighting for his life. He's like, yeah, I don't even like baseball. I'm just watching to see if I can catch my parents in the stands. I watched Dan run into gunfire
and put his life at risk for guys in another branch of service he is only known for a couple of weeks because of the bond of brotherhood that exists among warriors. And Dan is the kind of guy that if to this day he said, Jeff, I need you to go into combat and I need you to put your life on the line for me, I do it without hesitation. Because I know Dan is the kind of guy who would do it for me. Now here's how I want to wrap up, guys. I want to ask you, do you have a Ranger buddy like that? Do you have somebody who loves you so much that they will look you in the eyes and they will grab you by the shirt collar and they will keep you from making a mistake that will wreck your life? Do you have the kind of buddy that will be there at 2 o'clock in the morning? No questions asked, they got your back. But more importantly, do you have the kind of brother in Christ who will kick you in the seat of the pants when you need to be kicked in the seat of the pants. Because every guy, including me in this room, needs somebody to do that from time to time. To prevent you from making a stupid mistake that you're gonna regret for the rest of your life. Most of us in this room, I've been around men my entire life. I've been around really strong, really competent men my entire life. Most of us in this room have 100 acquaintances in our life, but not one genuine friend. And if you don't have that kind of guy in your life, you need to go get him tonight. Because there's going to come a moment where you're going to be in over your head and you need a brother in arms who's right next to you and he's got your back. One of the greatest gifts ever given to me, number one, without question, is the gift of my salvation. But probably the second greatest gift I've ever been given in my life is the love of a ranger brother who's got my back and who will look me in the eyes and tell me something that I don't want to hear about me when nobody else will say it. So guys, my challenge to you is, before you leave here tonight, you go find somebody like that. Find them in this room, or go text somebody and tell them, hey man, I need to sit down and grab a cup of coffee with you because I need a brother who will lock arms with me, hold me accountable, and make me into the kind of man that I know God wants me to be. Guys, it has been I've been trying to get here for 3 years, and I just wanted to say thanks. Thanks for the chance to share a steak with you tonight. Thanks for sitting and listening so graciously tonight. And I hope you have a Merry Christmas. God bless.